Great. All right, everyone, welcome to the release working group. Yay. I believe this is the first time I'm actually in a release working group meeting, that I'm the only releaser around. So bear with me. But yeah, I was also thinking maybe it's a good opportunity to get more people like involved, right? Like can understand how it works a little, right? Like, and maybe some of you will want to participate in the future. Who knows, right? So yeah. So, but basically the whole idea, like how it worked in the last collaborator summit, we just had a normal agenda, right? And then we kind of like, we can go into tangents that have conversations, but it's the regular release agenda, right? Like, so folks from the community can participate, right? We can be in person, like doing it. So yeah, so we do have a small agenda here, and I think, I mean, I'm reusing the issue from the last meeting because we ended up not having it because it was just last week. There was this one coming up. We said, okay, let's not have it. So we even have some minutes document here, and we can use it if someone has their laptop open, like, and actually want to. Wes, would you kindly offer yourself to take notes? Oh my God! Yeah. Okay, I'm not gonna force anyone to do that, but that's usually something we do, right? Like we.
Netflix live all over again, Wes.
Thanks. I was on call. I was like one of the first people.
Dude, I pinged you on Twitter. I wanted to watch the thing.
Okay.
That's why I went down. Is because I didn't take notes.
I'll take notes, Roy. I will.
All right. All right. All right. So yeah. Okay. So Darcy, you can go to the Node.js release repo, and then to the issues. Is it kind of, yeah, it's readable, right?
Yeah, you're good.
And then you're going to see that last meeting issue. You can click on that, scroll down, find the meeting link, the minutes note link there. Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah, no, but honestly, like you can all go and add your name here to the list of attendees. Like, let me do it. See, it's fun, and then people will see that you actually you were there and you participated. Okay.
Hacking.
So, yeah. So. Well, this is I think this is a very light agenda we have here.
It looks like it. Literally.
So
It's just
yeah, so the regular meetings is kind of.
Oh, here we go. Everybody's in now.
Yeah, so it's usually we try to organize the releases, right? Like so the releasers can like sign up for a specific release line and they can commit to like, okay, I'm going to do the 18 release in the next week or whatever is coming up, right? So, yeah. So we can go over the release plan here. Let's click. What does it look like? Okay, so we have an issue like this. So you can see we try to keep an up-to-date table here with the dates that we're planning. And so current release lines like this is every 2 weeks, right? So you can see like we're missing the next one. Like someone, no, we actually have Targos is signed up for 3. That's probably already out, yes. And then there's another one coming up on the 16th. Yeah. So you can see like people can sign up. Like so the release team, like we can all come to these issues and like sign up for an upcoming one. And we can also, you see there's conversations going on in these issues. So that's basically how it works for the releasers to kind of organize the flow of releasing. And from time to time, usually we have way more discussions. Like we used to have a lot the end of last year, but like this is pretty light now. So there is this one about the release keys. Okay. Yeah, which is like, it looks like there's a key that is missing from the kind of public thing that they use to validate those keys. So from time to time, someone will bring up a conversation like this that the release group needs to be involved, and those conversations will happen in the release working group meeting too. So that's another thing we do. So yeah. So while we're here, given that the agenda is super light and I don't have any of my friends with me, I thought we could maybe also just go over a little of how the release process works. And that's great because I also don't know. What I do every time is that I come to the Node repo, and luckily we have it super well documented here. So basically, this is the Node.js release process. And honestly, everything we do when we're about to run a new release is just kind of following the script to the letter, right? So it kind of describes everything you would need, even pre-steps, okay, who can make a release, right? How do you get access to all the services you're gonna need in the process, right? So all of this is documented in the Node repo. So it's public there. You can go see doc contributing releases, and there's all the steps. So one of the good kind of amount, there's probably that gives a lot more of work when working on the releases is getting the things that we want to ship, right? Okay, so there's PRs that are open to backport, let's say, features that landed on 20, but maybe you want to backport that to 18. So sometimes the release are even we can even go and write the backport ourselves, right? But that's usually also something we appreciate from the community, right? If you see a feature that, okay, just landed on current, maybe the author of that feature is busy with other stuff and can't work on a backport right away, it can also be something you can coordinate. Oh yeah, I can help with that. Then you can write a backport for a different release line. So that's something that takes a lot of time to work on. It's kind of just building the branch that is eventually going to be that release, right? So you kind of start out from a proposal branch like this, and then you kind of get all the commits you wanna in that release in there, and that eventually becomes a pull request, and that pull request can be reviewed by other releasers and other collaborators. And then we run all the CI stuff on it too, right? So we want to make sure everything is green, and then you want to be sure you're also able to build all the release artifacts that you're going to need, and yeah, and then eventually, once all that is done, you can tag, and that's basically once you tag, you push it to the repo. That's kind of when the release goes out. So there's a small script that automates the promotion of all the artifacts that were built so that they're available to everyone, right? And we put together the blog post. And yay, we can go to the rest of the world and say, yay, a new Node.js release is available. So that's the kind of 5 minutes overview of how a Node.js release works. And you can see there's details okay, set up for the next release, there's a small commit that goes to, and you push that out to the main branch afterwards. So yeah, with that said, because that's kind of all I had for a quick presentation. I wasn't expecting to have a presentation. I was expecting to have a a collaboration. So
Am I reading this right, that there's some extras that you guys do in security?
oh, let's get the microphone. Yeah, come on.
Was I reading that right, that there's some extras in the process if it's a security release compared to just...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk
yeah.
about that? Because security.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there is some extra step for both the security releases and also when it's LTS. And when LTS, there's a bunch of things you got to be kind of aware of. And there's some other extra steps documented here. I know with Rafael did the last two major breaking chains, right? the recent 18 and 20, like no 19 and 20, yeah, were the ones that Raphael worked on, and like I know like he also documented a lot of the missing parts because it takes a lot of time actually to actually build this database with all the, a lot comes from just like ancient knowledge, right? Like when people and someone who was doing that before transferring that knowledge to the next releaser that's being onboarded. So we're doing more and more of this good work of trying to document every single thing, like every little stuff.
And on that kind of leads to a question that I was going to ask you all, like, which is that the documentation of the release process is like way better than it was the last time I looked at it, which was a while ago. I'm curious if you guys have noticed an increase in people participating in the release WG since, because that was a little bit of I think a few years ago, was it not just a huge kind of problem? Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think it's in a much better state now than it used to be, right? Like because a few years ago it was, but yeah. I don't know. I don't think we're in a. But at the same time, I don't want to say too much because I kind of missed the last two meetings. Maybe someone raised something that I'm not aware of. But I don't think we're in a stage where we're looking because we're desperate. We need more contributors now. But I know that that didn't used to be the case before, right? Like there, yeah. So now, no, I think we're about 8, like active, maybe a little less. So trying to count from the top of my head here, but I think we're about like 8 people, like, and we're all rotating, right? Like, it's just that like major releases are more complicated. That's a bigger commitment, right? Like, so someone like Raphael who has more time, like that's usually like someone who step in, right, to take care of a bigger release like that. But for the small releases, we tend to rotate within the team, right? So yeah, that's kind of how it works. But yeah, I think we're still a working group, always open like for people who want to join, to participate. But I don't think we're in a critical state right now. Yeah, to answer the question, yeah.
Yeah, so just 2 little things from Slack, actually.
Oh,
Slack
great.
crashed.
Yeah, okay. Forgot about Slack. Thank you.
Yeah, we have Slack, and it just crashed.
Oh, no.
So both are from Danny Adams.
Okay.
So the first one, should it be updated to show the future V20X releases, the issue showing the releases?
Oh.
Because right now,
Oh, great.
oh,
Thank
wait,
you.
when it got updated, like literally seconds ago, it was not.
No, yeah. Thank you, Danielle.
She's just literally edited by Danielle.
Yeah,
she should
exactly.
probably
Yeah.
added
So
them.
she just
Yeah, she's adding them. She should photo.
Awesome.
She's fast. Yeah. The second thing is regarding to Jari's question. She was mentioned. She thinks that there's really good mentorship from the release working group that has grown the releasers group in addition to the docs.
Oh, awesome.
So
Awesome comment. Yeah.
I also have no idea what that is,
Yeah.
but what that even means.
Yeah.
But yeah, Danny, you're the MVP. So
Yes, thank you. Okay, so yeah, at least, yeah, you see some of my releaser friends are with us online, just not here. That's great, yeah, thank you.
they're here.
Yeah, sure, on Zoom, watching the stream. So yeah, I think Wes had a comment before. Go ahead, it's a light session.
As not somebody who's ever done a release, I've been to 2 of these now.
Okay.
Well, I did think Miles did one. Was it last year?
Right.
Maybe.
We did have one in Dublin too. Like
Okay,
Dublin, yeah.
okay.
That one was that we had a bunch of the releases there, so it was more like a normal.
Okay. And I was not there for that
meeting,
one.
yeah.
Well, anyway, what I wanted to ask was, and I'm assuming you've all thought about this. It seems from the outside, even though it's well documented, still rather time intensive and complicated. I'm wondering, like, is there opportunities for some automation to reduce that so that it's not
Yeah. I know Rafael is always working on some of these automation. Yeah, I think he did work for. I think recently he has been for the security releases specifically. I think he automated a lot of the steps, the extra steps that happen for the security releases. So I think yes, but the thing is that the low hanging fruit, like those are gone. Like the most, yeah. So because there is a ton of these, these steps that we go over here, that the important part is the human, reviewing, like the maintenance and kind of like there's just making sure that the previous steps, like okay, everything is all right. All the commits that I want to go to this release, do they make sense? Did we is there any Semver major commit that slipped in like somehow, right? It's usually not the case. Like Semver, it's probably not a good example, but you see what I mean, right? Like there maybe something shouldn't be there, or you want to change things around. Like that's the human value that is added, right? Like, and it's kind of hard to just automate like everything all at once, right? Like so, yeah. But there might be still, like some somewhat not so low hanging fruits anymore, but some hanging fruits that can be automated. There might be some opportunity, but yeah, I think I had one idea actually when I was working in the releases. One of the things that happens often is that so you want to land all these comments, right? Like, but sometimes things will conflict, right? So that's when you need the more manual backporting, right? Like, because otherwise, if everything is just like this, the history is clean, right? Like commits are landing one on top of each other, you don't need to be manually backporting anything, right? So one opportunity to automate something that I really wanted to build or motivate other folks to build, it's maybe like a GitHub action or something, or automated bot that goes and like kind of writes a comment in a PR that will eventually need a backport, right? Like so, kind of like an action or a bot that tries to kind of land all these commits like in order, like in the order that they would. I don't know. Yeah. I think it might be possible for each kind of release line to kind of like, but it's kind of like, there's a lot of moving parts. Like maybe the bot should be looking at only the release line and try to land the commits from the right place, because like commits for the current release, they should be coming from the main branch, right? But releases for like V18, let's say, right, the LTS, they should be coming from the version immediate, like above it, right? Like so V18, you should be picking up from 20, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think there is an opportunity to automate that step. Maybe Danielle has something to say about that, Claudio. If you want to just take a look at the Slack, like to see if there's any comment, like maybe Danielle will add
There's
something.
a comment. It's let's get AI to do our backporting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, because it is one of the most intensive like work. Yeah. Even detecting all that, right? Like, it's annoying. Like you're kind of like putting everything, and then oh shoot, okay, this PR won't land. Like so, you kind of have like, you kind of have the choice. Sometimes I remember one was an important one, but when Fetch landed, it was a release that I was working on. So I went ahead and I did the extra work to backport that PR right away because I wanted to land Fetch, right? So a releaser can do that, but it's a lot of extra work. So most of the time we'll just, we'll come on the original pull request. Okay, this needs backporting, like, and then we put a bunch of labels to kind of signal not only to other releasers, but also the automation tooling that we already have in place. Like it picks up from the labels is really like a way we communicate, like, and all the automation read from the labels on the. So they're very important. So like we can put so this is not landing on 18. So I can put a label that says needs backporting V18, right? And then other releasers will know of that for when the next release happens, right? And also the original PR author will see, and the tooling will pick that up. So that when I try to just run the rest of the script to put all the commits together, it will skip that commit, right? And then we can continue like with the release if we want, right? Like so. Yeah.
I sort of asked that question because something was on my mind. I think at one point, so we build our own like copies of Node internally, And at some point, like I think maybe some S3 cache of like keys or was broken. I don't know if that sounds familiar to y'all. And like it broke all of our internal rebuilds because we obviously verified the keys. And I was thinking if there's like automation around it, that if it was a machine doing the release, we wouldn't have this problem of like having to update the list of valid keys from the releasers, especially as you like strive to onboard more people. Like I think right now we might be doing that manually. And so like every time you add a new releaser and they do their first release, like it breaks us and then we have to go like import it. I mean, it's not a big deal, but I was just thinking automation wise, if it's some CI process somewhere doing it with a key that was not tied to you, right? If it was like a shared one for for that build,
project,
that would sort of alleviate that problem. And I'm not sure if this affects a lot of people. I don't know how many companies or whatever do, their own rebuilds internally.
Whenever there's something that messes up the keys, like we hear from a lot of people.
Okay, so probably a lot of people doing it.
Yeah.
So I bet you there's a lot of people out there manually updating these list of keys for some CI
a lot of big
tool
companies.
internally.
Yeah, definitely.
Wonder if there's maybe a way to even just make that automatable for people. Is it in? Yeah, because I think I've done this maybe once or twice, and I think if I remember correctly, also there's one list of keys somewhere that's not correct. Did that get fixed? There was like one list and then another one, and people were updating one but not the other. So I just looked at them and I noticed they were out of sync. Like maybe it's in the release.
Yeah, maybe it is something. It rings a bell. I think we kind of like might have changed like where they lived at some point. But maybe it has to
I'm pretty
do
sure
with,
I copied in the wrong one. I think is what happened.
Yeah, maybe it has to do with this issue here. In this key ring. Well, I don't know, but like, yeah. Well, there's a release keys repo. Look at that. So that's probably what you use. Yeah.
This looks familiar now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And from the Slack, Danielle says, we have been discussing shared key solution. I'd be interested.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, maybe that's something
Probably worth pursuing.
Yeah.
Just because if everybody, I didn't realize how common it was, then I guess if you hear about it that much, might be just a good leverage point to resolve that.
It might be something good to have get some help with. I don't know. Yeah. But that part of because maybe that's a little bit more into the build working group territory, to manage all the infrastructure for those keys. But I mean, manage the infrastructure to build that, and I think it's the tag actually. I think it's the tagging that uses that release key.
Okay.
This GPG key, I think it goes into the GitHub tag, like because all the artifacts, like that's already all elsewhere, right? I'm not building on my machine, like. Right, like there are machines out there from the build working group, like they're maintaining it. That builds for the Windows distro, right, and the Linux and everything, right. So I think that the key is only for the GitHub tag, but I'm not sure if it's used.
Yeah, because if you could just move a shared key into the repo and have an action that did the tag, then like we'd not have this constantly updating list. It's not even that constant, but here. Oh, geo.
But if you want to come to one of these meetings, like I think you should definitely talk with Richard. He is the one who knows more, understands more, because he's also in the build working group. So he is the one who knows more about all these things. Yeah. You wanna take here?
Yeah, so something that I was going to say, but Danielle also mentioned, is that we signed the binaries and the tags comments with our keys, which is what I imagine. Probably just use the keys from the SHASM files or something. But yeah, she mentioned that the binaries are signed, so that's that with the keys that you use. Yeah.
Okay. So we send over the key.
I suppose. Yeah, with the SHASM, yes, exactly. That's what I imagined. The SHASM file is used to then just get embedded on the binary. Yeah. And I had no idea that was the case, but I imagined.
Yeah, no, and that's one part of that. It's more opaque because it's all that part of the build is fully automated, like the building the artifact stuff, like that's very automated now. And yeah, so that makes sense. Yeah, we do. I have a custom setup somehow, like somewhat custom, that like I have a specific key for Node, and then I actually have to specify it for the script, like, in order to build it. So makes sense. So yeah. So any more fun release topics you want to bring on today? if not, we can also call this a shorter meeting. And oh, Darcy has a comment here.
What? No, what's the best thing about being a releaser? Why should everybody in this room be a releaser? What's the joy you get out of this work?
Well, yeah, I think the moment of joy is telling the world, oh, a new release is out. And then you can poke things, you can poke people like Jordan, who will post that to another, I don't know, 5 other Slack instances, and everybody will get hyped about it. I think that's probably the, and I mean, it's also exciting to have to be running the latest release before the rest of the world. But it's a lot of responsibility and work. I'm kind of like, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if it's, no, it is exciting. It's exciting. Let's everybody gets, yeah. No, but yes.
Power.
Yeah. You want the microphone? Just the conclusion notes from Claudio.
Excuse me, what conclusion notes from the closing notes from this session? I like chocolate. That's. I mean, what am I supposed to say? Come on. Saying things. Help me out here, Darcy. The schedule, okay. So this was supposed to be a double session, 1 hour session, but since, Rui is lazy and doesn't want to talk anymore, then I guess we have a break now, a half an hour break, or...
Wow. What a break. From what is this, 15 minutes?
Well, actually, we didn't have a break, that's the thing, but, well, now we got ourselves a break.
Package mode?
We
Or
can go
going
to
with
the
that
session that is in the other room, which is let's automate Node.js dependency updates, because
We
it's
should just
happening.
crossed it out and then put that.
Go to the other room. Or you just open Zoom and we watch from here, because we're lazy.
Welcome to the release meeting.
No, yeah, or we can just start random topics that we all love to discuss about, like the usual suspects like Darcy, Wes can start complaining about package maintenance or whatever.
Let's talk about the winter CG package
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so
Way to sucker him in and lead him out, Wes.
we're good.
Chocolate. Oh, yeah, chocolate's good. Oh, my God. Chocolate in all different kinds of ways.
Okay.
Okay.
What? Oh, yes.
People like that.
Just chat. Let's just chat. Chat, GPT.
We should just put ChatGPT on and just let it speak.
Let's see what ChatGPT thinks about doing a Node.js release.
You know what? You should actually do that. Go to ChatGPT and ask it, how do I do a Node.js release?
Yes, why not?
That's the last time I buy him shot.
Exactly.
I don't know, man. Actually, this one, I had one where I actually went to it where I was having an issue with...
Microphone.
Shoot. Sorry. So I was having an issue with NX, the monorepo tooling, not finding a package, and I still, to this moment, cannot find it. I actually went to ChatGPT to ask it, how do I find out why it's missing? It literally gave me all the reasons where I actually went to the documentation. They give you nothing. Absolutely nothing
Wow.
about why a package could be missing.
$12 an hour worker is doing amazing job.
I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have done that in about $12 an hour for that. No, so when you go and do there's a command on the CLI to list out your projects, it literally is missing one. But yet when I run it in Vercel's Turbo, it shows up fine. Where Lerna shows up just fine. Hell, NPM Workspace, it shows up just fine. Woo! Only in one thing will it not show up in their list, and not breaks our automation, but I get a failure on the check because it can't run that package. I'm like, what the is this?
Hold that Jaws for a little longer.
So word to the wise, don't use an X. Well, no, I know. It's a fine tool. Don't get me wrong, fine tool. It's just it's driving me nuts because it cannot find this one. So that's the only problem I have with it, honestly. Promise with that.
The only one. The only one.
Some people may have other opinions.
Turbo repo. Oh boy.
Wait, now hold on. If we can only get Turbo to clean up the console a little bit, I'd be a little bit more appreciative when it's in a non-CI state. What? Right?
Yeah, actually,
It's very cluttered.
I demoed on our team fairly recently is a wrapper that hides it all,
Oh, dude, that'd be beautiful.
splits it all out so that you can. I admit. Why are we complaining about Turbo Repo now? This session really went south. It is
Feedback.
actually. Yeah, we should have. Hopefully, they can get a recording of this. No, and he's not on that team. Yeah. But I think all the monorepo tooling has the same exact problem, right? If you have a really large one, the output is unintelligible, right? There's just no way for you to really have it all just spewed out on the CLI and have it be usable. Like what GitHub Actions UI, but for a local run. Something where it's split out and you see just the command, you can open it. Yeah, you can open it. You can see more about what's happening if you need to, but you really just see that it passed, right, is I think what you want. I know. This is product research. I know. It's good. I'm happy to be your, yeah.
Expand on that, for example, like when we do an actual GitHub action, like when you, for example, if you're doing any form of linting or you want to see those pop up in the console, well, if I'm running it for Turbo, they don't show up at the bottom of the GitHub UI for me to go, oh, okay, I need to go clean up all these packages with this garbage lint that's showing up that's not necessary. Whereas if I ran with, like right now, I with the NX, it pops up because it's natively populating the standard out with the coloring, so it's able to recognize that to populate to the UI.
Yeah.
So it's you get your catch-22 with either way you go, whatever you're looking to do, it's, based on the tooling you want to use it for. But yeah, for that, like when you're having a 70 package monorepo, like you want to be able to see all that so you know where your overhead is or where you need to clean up from a package maintenance or like a owner of the the whole code base. Darcy?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, do you care about the output that much, like in real time?
To not in real time. So I'm talking about the end of the job. Like at the end of the job, it does if it's not there for when I'm running it in Turbo. That's what I mean. I don't care about watching it like I'm sitting there watching paint dry.
So hypothetically, you could set it to background process and free yourself up. So I'm just saying, hypothetically, I know, but if hypothetically someone
I have a question. I have a question about the whole conversation about like because your idea about GitHub Actions and like workspaces and one thing I would like to kind of like just gather the sentiment from other CLI friends, folks around here, right? Like, what is the overall sentiment these days about having the CLI launch? Like, let's say it launches a separate process for an Electron app that you can parse better from that UI, right? Like it's not only in the terminal anymore, and now you can have like it spit out, pops up a new Electron window that can render a nicer UI for that.
So we have this like setup that does it's not explicitly a monorepo tool, but it's about running multiple apps in your local dev environment. It's using this like tmux session thing.
Right.
Well, cool in concept, yes. I think in practice, what happens is you end up with this window, and if you add a bunch of libraries doing stuff to it, especially if you were to do, and this is something that I'm going to be hopefully working on under this proof of concept that I built, but it's like if you want to do like matrix testing for a monorepo where you test your libraries against say 3 versions or whatever, all the LTSs, right? A tmux session? No, right? And so I think that the web UI view. So we had a team that uses Turbo
Right.
repo and also has experience with this product that we have internally. And actually, one of the team members wrote a web UI specifically to pull them into there because they had a big monorepo and the CLI experience is really bad. So I think it's not so much that people really like the web UI; they just really don't like the like CLI dumping too much on
because
you.
the CLI, like that interface, like it's perfect. It's brilliant for some kind of tasks, right? But that
For very linear, for like a very linear task,
Repeatable,
it is
right, like,
fine, right?
yeah, it is
but,
great,
But
but
as we
when-
get to these big things,
Yeah.
the performance of a linear run
Yeah.
is prohibitive, right? You get these things where the npm install is 20 minutes,
Yeah.
then the like first unit test run is like 3 minutes, and then you've got 40 of those. So the whole thing, like in CI, in linear, in like a Jenkins job or whatever, takes like an hour, right?
Gosh.
Their interface for like pipeline. Yeah, the cloud. Yeah.
I've seen it.
You've seen it? What do you think? Okay.
I mean, it's not a bad interface. I will give them that. But
Has anybody used what's it called? Oh my gosh, I just had it in my head. Temporal.
temporal.
Temple.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. What do you think of that?
I've not fully committed to a base, but I love that it handles it better.
Okay.
Wait. So
Temporal.io.
the world.
Yeah, so love. I hate dates in period in general. Like using it in. There you go. The current
Are you talking about
implementation is-
the date API? I'm talking about temporal.io. It's a tool for
No, see,
async.
he even said literally. You're talking about the
dates.
temporal proposal, and you said yes. That's what I was.
I mean, we shifted from like
Hardship.
queuing pipelines to like dates. No, I'm talking yeah.
Hardship.
If you look it up, yeah, you might be
Temporal.io.
like, oh, I gotta go use this thing now.
I'm gonna.
Somebody uses it in your yeah. So
Hey,
it's
better get on that, Wes.
Yeah,
Like, find out fast.
so it is pretty cool.
Everyone's googling this.
Yeah,
right now.
you're gonna want to look into it. In terms of like the interface it provides for tracking down async eventing and essentially retries and everything. Like it's got some really interesting UI there, and I think to Roy's original point, like I think we can sometimes hit a maximum threshold with what we can do with CLI tools. And I think that's what happened with the Narwhal team with NX, and they're like, okay, well, like we want to visualize things as well, like with like graph. Like I think you can do NX graph and showcase like the DAGs and stuff like that,
Graph
pipelines.
Yeah, the graph is.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Let's
Especially
just
if you
say
have 70 packages. Mine was like this giant, like, just I was all maxed out and I couldn't even read anything. I was like, hold on, enhance constantly.
we can do better
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
So one thing that I'm interested with this tooling is how it like composes and layers together too, because I think that's one of the things that why the CLI has always been so powerful, right? The whole design of the CLI is about composability, right? And as soon as we do these, and I've looked at some other things, and my biggest complaint with when I read through the NX, I don't use it, but was just that it looks like it's too much of a commitment. Like you're really having to buy in, right? Yeah. And I think Lerna was the same way. You install Lerna, and then every single NPM script in your package JSON has to run Lerna, or the whole thing falls apart, right? And that to me is a poor design, right? Like what you want is something that composes better, right, and makes you have less of a buy-in, so that if it fails, you can turn it around, right? And that is what I have found so far with Turbo Repo, which is why I mentioned it, is that it actually composes very well without a ton of buy-in. If I want to rip it out, I can rip it out, right?
You can rip it out, but on top of that, using extra tooling around it. So you want to add something, automate your change logs, automate, there's not like with Lerna, you had to commit to the Lerna way of those things. Whereas with Turbo, okay, cool, just run Turbo, your command and go. Like, bada bing, bada boom, it takes care of you. But that is a cool thing. And the only reason I solely went with with NX was during this, we upgraded to the latest of Warnug. We're like, hey, we need to get past these security warnings. This is also slowing us down in terms of development and delivery. So we just stuck with what we had for now because we need to keep going. But throughout that process, now we're learning this tooling is cool and all, but like it's definitely got its pitfalls, like with like every other tooling you find when you spend so much time working in it. So, but yeah, Turbo is nice. I mean, I'm not hating on it. I wish it was a cleaner UI, but in terms of when I'm running, because I don't like watching paint dry, but. But yeah, no, I agree. Like having the ability to be much more composable, like that's why I actually do like working in workspaces, is you can script everything up yourself. You literally pop it to each of the space. You just pop the command and away you go. Similar methods that Turbo is providing.
Mm-hmm.
It's called dogfooding.
And I think though, if we get into this,
the term right, Wes, or right, Darcy.
Dogfooding? I mean, are you on the NPM team? I knew it.
That was a secret all along.
This whole time, I knew you didn't want to work with me.
but yeah, I was just going to add on I think the hard part about getting into these more complicated UIs is that it almost always is a sacrifice of composability, right? So like this UI looks awesome, but like then what if I wanted to compose this with something that, something else? I'd probably have a lot of legwork to do, right?
Because that is a very like what you're looking at there with temporal is like a very general purpose, like eventing, like software. What we're talking about with like running tasks and pipelines across your dependencies, let's say, and your workspaces, I think that there is an opportunity still for us to standardize dependency, like representation of your dependency graph. And we can get, I hope, a lot of the folks in the same room or come to the same table and say, if there's this kind of schema or representation that we can all build towards, this kind of like AST, then we can build those composable tools around that interoperable standard, right? And I think we can get there. And we were like a year ago when I wrote the dependency selector syntax RFC for NPM, that was basically like I was thinking ahead, like what does it look like for you to pipe NPM in like NPM query, a query of your of anything of your project, whether it's workspaces or you want to run tests of your dependencies, pipe that output to something else like an audit, right? Like so basically like look at jQuery, right? Like it sounds crazy, but like look at what jQuery could do in terms of like taking a selector and then just like basically like just continuing to like execute on these things and always returning essentially the set or the subset of things you want to execute something against. So I think that if we come up with like what that looks like, whether it's like always has to have a path, it always has to have the name, the version, whatever the minimum keys are for the dependency graph, then we can eventually build tooling around it. And so like, it doesn't matter if it's Turbo Repo, doesn't matter if it's NX or whatever. We could all have interoperable sort of like schemas that we could share. And I think that would benefit the ecosystem because then more tools could be built to add metadata to that schema. And yeah.
Is that not the lock file?
Oh, the lock file. That's not the lock file. I mean, the lock
file is a standard schema that represents the dependency graph.
Oh, except when the reference can be mutable and is a magic value.
This was one of the points. No, I don't know. But I think we were in the same boat, but we wanted to also make NPM query more powerful, right? Like, but ideally, NPM query should be able to read directly from the package lock, and that's it, right? Retrieve that info from just a single file read, right? I could just have the package lock in memory, and you can figure out all of that. But then
you want to virtualize as well.
Yeah.
So like no more. Imagine if Arborist didn't have the requirement to have file system path, right? Like that is truly, you want to be able to walk and build that up. So yeah, and what Roy's saying is right, and what you're saying is right. If you have a log file, then yes, you can also read from that, and you have that representation.
Yeah.
There's missing context in the log file today. In fact, and I say we, NPM was running into bugs with NPM CI, especially around legacy peer deps, where people were like, oh crap, I generated a log file with this set of configuration. That configuration did not get stored in the log file, and now we are basically saying, oh, you have to continue to use the exact same configuration you did when you installed as you do with CI.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait a second, so actually it's not just the log file that I need now. I mean, my log file and the config has to be the same each and every time.
Yeah, stuff like persist in the, if you opt in to like ignoring legacy peer depth, right? That should be persisted to the package log. So that when you npm install again is the same, right?
I was going to say, this has bit us. We have projects that have lock files that were generated on...
No longer my problem, no
Yeah,
longer
I know,
my problem.
I know. Hey, we still have somebody here whose problem it is. I know. But we have basically, like one team member will run with a global NPM config that points somewhere that is, it correctly resolves the package, but we have like a bunch of layers between a developer installing and public registry. And so there's a bunch of URLs you could use. They're not what we recommend, but so one team person pushes a change that's pointing to a host, and then that host is not something the team that runs those things thought was being used, removed it, or I think maybe an SSL cert expired or something, but then it's in the lock file, right? And what we want is the config for that to actually be centralized, right? We don't want a developer machine to be able to have a config at all that's going to break the entire repo for the entire rest of the team, right? If you got 30 people working on a project and one person slips in a weird config, and then that gets committed in the lock file, right? And so that it breaks CI. So this has actually definitely happened.
Oh, I've constantly seen that happen. I see, not in terms of just like that particular situation, but like they'll commit something that isn't in the CI and it just breaks CI altogether.
Is it possible for any thinking about all the ways the developer workstation specifics could leak into production artifacts? There seems like that's not necessarily the avenue you'd want to squash, because there's, to me, seems like endless possibilities for that. But you would still, to me, the fact that there would be churn, visual, noticeable, not ignored by default churn in my lock file, as a developer, I'd be like, oh, I did something wrong. Because my workstation definitely has a bunch of opinions where maybe sometimes it's going to try to put files in repos, and I'm like, don't do that. Like, those don't belong there. But it's not on... I shouldn't try to like remove all my developer workstation opinions. I should try and just make it measurable and like reproducible, where like, you know, if the lock file is going to churn, someone's going to review that PR and be like, hey, Luke, you just, you know, committed your developer, you know, you basically committed your dot files to, you know, opinions into production. Don't do that.
Yeah, but there's also the scenario where your lock file is a lie. Like,
I was talking from the perspective of if the lock file is not a lie, I want all of those. I want the state of the system to be committed to the lock file. I want that to happen more, so that developers will see that happen and be like, oh, don't commit that. And in order to do it, you create an npm-rc file for the specifics of npm. You create an npm-rc file in your project that's going to override, you know, all the configs that you care about. Maybe there's some you don't, but like, let's say you always want to, you know, never print a log level for stuff. Like, that should be in your npm-rc instead of allowing, you know, developers to change that. But it, like, log levels are bad because that doesn't affect your lock file. But like, you know, peer deps, like that should be always committed to the lock file. I say that as an npm CLI developer who has not fixed that, but it should be.
yeah, there's other issues also with like just obviously post install scripts installing other things that are not in the log file, are not being tracked, other dependencies and environment specific things that happen, and specifically the configuration, the registry configuration with npm, it treats the target reference, the registry.npm.js.org, as a magic value. So if you change the registry configuration, it changes the location of where the tarball is going to be fetched from, which means that that thing is not like it's not necessarily reproducible and like has all the information and context that you need. Like it sounds like most people really want like a complete snapshot of like their project in time and want to be able to just like, yeah, like have as much immutability as they can, like with CI, like when you don't have those dependencies like already in the environment.
So I think part of the problem today, though, is that we have these recommendations like that are very popularly promoted of like put an npm-rc file in your home repo or your home directory. And that should just never be a thing. It needs to be in the project because otherwise nobody else can build your thing if they clone it down, right? Without following this step with an out of bounds file that they have to, you know, that works on my machine. We've made it much worse by recommending that to people. Like ideally, and we should work on this at some point, npm init creates an npm-rc file and puts your registry in it, even if it's the default.
Yeah, it's like almost like there should be an initiative by a broader community to create some kind of standard way to scaffold packages. You might even call it create packages.
PKG. Create PKG, I think.
It's like
that sounds like
some
a great
people
name.
have tried to do that in the past. You and I specifically.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. But I think that's the thing is like what I'm more concerned about is just making it easier for people to be doing the right thing. And today, I think the lock file is still missing some guardrails. Like there's obviously ways you can break it. And we're never going to cover the, 100% or whatever. But I think today we're covering like, unfortunately, 10%, right, or something of these things. And the way people get around it today is delete the lock file. Everybody has been trained to delete the damn log file, and that
I do
is
it.
dangerous,
To this day.
right?
Yeah, the thing you do, right? You delete the log file, delete the node module
Yeah, if
folder.
something doesn't work, everybody's
There you
been
go.
trained. Delete the log file, delete the node modules, and install. Right.
Everybody right now uses tools that interact with an API that is not documented. You all do it every day.
All right. So under this tone, I'd like to close this free-form chat portion of the. Yeah, and we can get ready for the next session. I think it's about to start. Oh, thank you all.